I'm sorry to interrupt your meal. I hope you're enjoying it. We got to a late start this evening, so we're going to get started a little early with one of our next awards. I call forward Congressman Keith Rothfuss to present the Legatus Cardinal O'Connor Defender of the Faith Award. This award recognizes strong defense of our Lord in the Holy Eucharist, Catholic principles, articles of faith, and the sanctity of human life and marriage, despite adverse public media criticism or political incorrectness. Congressman Rothfuss represents the people of Pennsylvania's 12th Congressional District, which includes Pittsburgh's northern suburbs, and has a strong connection to this year's recipient of the Defender of the Faith Award. You may recognize Congressman Rothfuss on the stage last week because he is Catholic and he is pro-life, and he was at the March for Life. Congressman?
Hey, good evening, everybody. Well, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here. You know, this morning I began my day scraping a windshield. We had a pretty heavy frost last night. It wasn't until I got to be a little bit older I realized, you know, there are places in this country that don't know what frost is. But it is cold up north, and it's good to be here with some warm friends, so thank you very much. You know, it's a real privilege for me to be here tonight, to be with you, and to reflect a little bit upon the recipient of the award. I'm going to take a walk down memory lane if I could. 40 years ago, and only 3 years after the grandson of Polish and Slovak immigrants began his priestly ministry, a new voice entered the world stage from what he called a faraway country. I have to believe that this young priest in western Pennsylvania, born of Polish stock in the industrial town of Ambridge, Pennsylvania, was a little bit more enthused than any of us in the remarkable days of October 1978, when Pope John Paul II offered his first homily. In that homily, John Paul said, "Brothers and sisters, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to welcome Christ and accept his power. Help the Pope and all those who wish to serve Christ, and with Christ's power, to serve the human person and the whole of mankind. Do not be afraid. Open wide the doors for Christ, to his saving power. Open the boundaries of states, economic and political systems, the vast fields of culture and civilization and development. Do not be afraid. Christ knows what is the man. He alone knows it." What an inspiration that must have been for one just embarking upon his ministry. And it was an encouragement that that young priest, Father David Zubik, would need as he was just beginning his work. Early in his priesthood, Father Zubik was assigned to serve as vice principal at Quigley Catholic High School in Beaver County, Pennsylvania in the early 1980s. For those who might be unaware of our nation's industrial heritage, Beaver County was at the center of the collapse of the steel industry in those days. Although southwestern Pennsylvania today is firmly established as one of the great places to live with a very vibrant and dynamic economy, stories like this were quite commonplace in 1982. He was just 29 and already a 10-year veteran of the mills and mines. That's what rugged men living in this stretch of steel country did in those days. They left high school, got a job in the mill, married, fathered 2 kids, and had a mortgage by the time they were 30. His name was Denny. a millwright, and a welder. And his middle-class way of life was made possible by what our region had always been good at: forging metal, mining coal, rolling tubes, making the world one ingot and one I-beam at a time. This life would not last. By 1982, Denny had seen the writing on the wall many times over, in the form of transfers and layoff notices. A job at Bethlehem Steel Franklin Works near Johnstown disappeared after 5 years. A job at the company's railcar plant ended too, as did his next mill job. His last job just lasted 8 months. By December of 1982, he was perpetually unemployed. His wife was gone. His home was up for sale, and he moved back home to be with his parents. In industrialized Beaver County, Father Zubik's home, the unemployment rate hit 27% in 1983, greater than the peak U.S. unemployment in the Great Depression. Bishop Zubik reflected on those days in an interview a number of years ago. The people who worked in Beaver County went into significant depression. I saw the effects of that in the community and in the students I taught. It was a challenging time. What was happening in a lot of these homes was an almost unbearable tragedy. But the faith remained steadfast. This was the crucible in which Bishop Zubik's courage and faith was strengthened. In 1997, Pittsburgh's then Bishop, Donald Wuerl, elevated Father Zubik to auxiliary bishop. And in 2003, Pope John Paul II sent him to Green Bay, Wisconsin, to become bishop there. And in 2007, Pope Benedict sent him back to us in Western Pennsylvania to become the Bishop of Pittsburgh. There has not been a day since where Bishop Zubik has not worked and has not prayed. While the economy of southwestern Pennsylvania is vastly improved from what it was in the early 1980s, Bishop Zubik today faces other challenges. He is a tireless advocate for the marginalized, the poor, the immigrant, those as yet not born. And he knows that the new evangelization offers solution to everyone who is seeking answers. That is why Bishop Zubik understood the stakes in the fight for religious freedom. His call to stand up and defend our religious freedom, the very first freedom in either of our founding documents, the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution, the very first freedom, his defense of that was courageous and reminiscent of the prophets of old. In challenging the heavy hand of the federal government, he must have been remembering the words of that other Polish priest: "Do not be afraid." Let us all follow that example of courage. I am very humbled to be here to recognize my bishop, the Bishop of Pittsburgh, His Excellency David Zubik, here tonight, and to affirm Legatus's choice to convey upon him the Cardinal O'Connor Defender of Religious Freedom Award. Thank you for this honor that you're bestowing upon him. And with that, I think we're going to have some video tributes to him.
The Cardinal O'Connor Defender of the Faith Award is presented annually to recipients exemplifying the strongest protection of Catholic principles, articles of faith, and the sanctity of human life and marriage. Ordained May 3, 1975, and appointed Bishop of Pittsburgh July 18, 2007, Bishop David Zubik is being recognized for his life's work as a staunch and constant defender of children and their right to be born. Joining us in honoring Bishop Zubik is Christopher Donahue, CEO of Federated Investors and a stalwart of the Catholic Church.
Congratulations, Bishop Zubik, on winning the Cardinal O'Connor Award. Cardinal O'Connor had some great sayings. One of them was that to be a good bishop, you don't have to swing at every pitch, but when you do swing, you have to have an impact. And you certainly did that in the case of Zubik versus the culture of death. Thank you for your discerning spirit, your prayerful approach as a leader, and your support for the pro-life cause. As you know, our family is very strong on pro-life. Chris and Ann have 36 grandchildren and are delighted with every one of them. We are most appreciative of your commitment to making all of this possible. Thank you, and God bless.
Good evening to all of you, my Legatus friends. I'm honored to be with you tonight in Orlando, though not as you and I had hoped. The old flu bug took care of my being with you in person. You've graciously recognized my efforts in defense of our religious freedom with the Cardinal O'Connor Defender of the Faith Award. I'm humbled when I look at the list of past recipients and still others who are more deserving than I am to receive this distinguished award tonight. Ours was a long legal and spiritual battle to preserve religious freedom guaranteed by the writers of our Constitution. 20 months after our argument on March 23, 2016, before a packed United States Supreme Court, our 5-year challenge to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services mandate aimed at religious institutions was resolved. It was a negotiated settlement with the government, civil in every sense of the word, in response to the instructions of the Supreme Court to find a mutually acceptable resolution to the case known as Zubik versus Burwell. The settlement eliminated the new and dangerous distinction between houses of worship and religious institutions that would have forced faith-based institutions to violate their basic beliefs. Let me explain. Zubik versus Burwell is legal shorthand for a collective of cases grouped together, 70 religious organizations represented by the law firm of Jones Day that filed an initial challenge to the government's regulations in May 2012. We were joined by many other plaintiffs, Catholic and Protestant alike, who had representation from other law firms, most notable among them the Little Sisters of the Poor. Blessedly and constitutionally, we reached our settlement with the government, and the government has since revised this rule for everyone. Just last week, on January 18th, we all learned that a new Conscience and Religious Freedom Division will be established within the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Civil Rights to protect against future violations, such as the HHS mandate. But that's not to say that an attitude, and even more so a threat, doesn't linger. The government has no right constitutionally to suppress that foundational faith-filled understanding of who we are, how we are to live, and how we put our faith into action. Religious freedom is not a passive act. Religious freedom is intentionally action. Religious freedom has to be expressed. Religious freedom has to be lived. Religious freedom has to be out in the open among the people. I know, I'm preaching to the choir, but you know what? Preaching to the choir can be very, very good. God bless you all and all that you do. Thanks again for this honor, and please remember that nothing is impossible with God.
Here it is, the Cardinal O'Connor Defender of the Faith Award, and I'm going to make sure that my friends from the Legatus chapter in Pittsburgh are going to deliver this personally to Bishop Zubik. May God bless Bishop David Zubik. May he bless him in his ministry, and may he bless and protect our precious religious freedom.